Emma Turner's life began with tragedy. The moment she let out her first cry, her mother took her last breath. Her father, Richard Turner, sat stunned in the hospital room, clutching his newborn daughter while sobbing into the void of an unbearable loss. From that day on, Emma grew up in a home with a devoted father's presence, but without the warmth of a mother's embrace. 5 years later, Richard remarried. The woman who stepped into their lives was Karen, a gentle woman in her 20s with warm brown eyes and a kind smile. She didn't just agree to marry a widower, she opened her arms to a child who wasn't her own. Neighbors whispered, "A stepchild is never truly loved." But they were wrong. Karen cared for Emma with tenderness, feeding her, tucking her into bed, and loving her as if she were her own flesh and blood. In time, the little family grew. Karen gave birth to 2 children, Mia, a lively girl who was always tugging at Emma's sleeve, begging, "Come play with me, sis," and Ethan, a frail little boy who often woke the household with midnight cries. The once quiet home turned into a place brimming with laughter, tears, childish quarrels, and sometimes the weary sighs of exhaustion. To provide for them, Richard took long-haul trucking jobs. Sometimes he was gone for months, returning home with small gifts: a teddy bear for Mia, a toy truck for Ethan, a few school books for Emma. He loved his children, but his long absences slowly turned him into a guest in his own home. Meanwhile, Karen managed everything alone. Neighbors often saw her juggling Ethan on one arm, holding Mia by the hand, and carrying shopping bags with her free hand, her tired figure stretching long across the narrow street. Yet she still managed to smile, her resilience and strength leaving a quiet mark on everyone who noticed. Emma, though not Karen's biological child, never once felt abandoned. Karen always told the children, "In this house, there's no such thing as stepchild or real child. There's only family." Those words etched themselves into Emma's heart, filling her with both gratitude and quiet emotion. But Emma also grew up quickly. After school, she would rush home to help Karen with the little ones. She held Ethan when he had a fever, soothed Mia when she pouted, and on nights when Karen was worn out, Emma would roll up her sleeves and cook. The porridge often burned, but it was filled with love. "Sweetheart, let me do that. You still have schoolwork," Karen would say, her voice tinged with guilt. Emma would only smile and shake her head. "I know how hard you work, and Karen, I'm the oldest. I should help." Every so often, Richard returned from the road, pulling Emma into a hug and whispering, "I'm sorry for not being here more often." Emma would just force a smile, never blaming him. To her, her father was a good man but too distant, too absent when she needed him most. And so, time passed quietly. Emma's childhood unfolded in the protective arms of Karen, and in the innocent laughter of Mia and Ethan. The years slipped away quietly, carried by the rhythm of changing seasons. Long, heavy summers gave way to winters that wrapped the small house in frost and silence. Emma Turner was no longer the skinny child who clutched her teddy bear at night. At 18, she had grown tall and slender, with a face that carried the soft grace of the mother she never knew. Sometimes, when the evening light caught her profile, Richard's relatives would murmur, "She looks so much like her mother." But Emma never knew whether to smile or feel the ache of absence in those words. In that little house, Emma had become both the eldest sister and the reluctant hero. Her days followed a pattern that was both ordinary and relentless. Rushing off to school in the morning, hurrying home to cook dinner in the afternoon, then spending the evening tutoring Mia and rocking Ethan to sleep. She was a student, a caretaker, a sister, and far too often an adult before her time. Her father, Daniel, was still away most of the year, driving long-haul routes to keep food on the table. He returned only every few months, carrying gifts and apologies. But his absences stretched like shadows across the family. The real weight of the household rested squarely on Karen's shoulders. Emma still called her Aunt Karen. It was a name spoken with respect, but also with a faint distance, as if Emma still needed to remind herself she wasn't Karen's child by blood. And yet, deep in her heart, she often thought of Karen as the closest thing she had to a mother. Karen was the one who stayed, the one who tucked her in at night, the one who never once made her feel like an outsider. One winter evening, the kitchen smelled of chicken soup, warm and comforting, filling the air with steam that clung to the windows. After dinner, Mia and Ethan scrambled off to the living room, their high-pitched voices rising as they fought over the TV remote. Emma stayed behind, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing dishes under hot water. The clinking of plates echoed softly in the background while Karen sat at the small wooden table, her hands folded, her silence stretching longer than usual. Finally, Karen spoke, her voice hesitant. Emma turned her head, trying to lighten the mood with a smile. "You sound serious. Don't tell me I forgot someone's birthday." Karen gave a short laugh, but her smile faltered almost immediately, replaced by a weary sigh. "No, it's not that. It's just, you're 18 now. I think it's time you helped out a little more. What I mean is, maybe it's time you started contributing to the household. A bit of money toward rent." The spoon in Emma's hand slipped against the porcelain. She froze, blinking, the words not sinking in at first. "Rent?" she repeated, almost as if the word didn't belong to her. Karen nodded, twisting the dish towel in her hands until her knuckles turned white. Her voice wavered as she tried to explain. "I know you've already done so much. I don't ever want you to feel like a burden. But, Emma, I can't carry all of this by myself anymore. I've tried for years, and now I need help. You understand, don't you?" Emma's chest tightened. For a moment, she saw flashes of Karen through the years, juggling Ethan on one hip while spoon-feeding Mia, rushing through the rain with grocery bags in both hands, falling asleep on the sofa mid-lullaby because exhaustion had won. And never once had she let Emma feel like she didn't belong. Never once had she treated her differently from the others. A lump rose in Emma's throat. She swallowed hard and forced a smile, though her eyes stung. "I get it. And Karen, think of it as me officially paying rent for my room and board, plus my full-time babysitting services." Karen let out a small laugh, but tears glimmered at the corners of her eyes. "You always joke. But thank you, Emma." Emma dried her hands, crossed the kitchen, and sat down beside her. She placed her hand gently on Karen's and spoke with quiet firmness. "I'll do it, not because I have to, but because I know you've been carrying this family for so long, all by yourself. If there's anything I can do to make it easier for you, I want to." For a moment, Karen didn't speak. Her shoulders sagged as though someone had finally seen the invisible weight she'd been holding for years. She reached out and clasped Emma's hand, her grip warm, trembling. In that small kitchen, words became unnecessary. Between them stretched a bond built not of blood, but of sacrifice, gratitude, and unspoken love. Then, from the living room, Mia's shrill voice shattered the silence. "Emma, Ethan's biting my pillow again." Emma burst out laughing, squeezing Karen's hand one last time before getting up. "See? I'm already working as a live-in babysitter, and I haven't even paid rent yet." Karen laughed too, but tears spilled down her cheeks, and this time neither of them tried to wipe them away. Once Emma agreed to start paying rent, her life became a relentless cycle, spinning faster and tighter each day. It was as if she had turned herself into a clock wound past its limit, its springs stretched thin, ticking with a nervous urgency that never stopped. Her schedule left no room for pause. At dawn, she was a student dragging her tired body into classrooms, pretending to follow along with lectures while her mind floated elsewhere. In the afternoons, she hurried across town to her new job at a coffee shop, tying her apron with a forced smile even when her legs ached. At night, she sat in front of her laptop, live streaming to sell secondhand clothes, her cheerful sales pitch masking the exhaustion tugging at her bones. And the moment she walked through the front door at home, she was no longer just Emma the student or Emma the part-time worker. She became Emma the older sister, the substitute parent. Before she could even set her backpack down, a voice would echo from the living room. Emma. Ethan spilled milk again. Mia's voice rang like a fire alarm. Emma dropped her jacket onto the couch and reached for a rag, sighing as she muttered under her breath, "Of course. Milk spills are clearly the true meaning of life, not math theorems." She wiped up the mess while Ethan stood sheepishly nearby, his big eyes wide with fox innocence. Emma gave him a playful flick on the forehead. "Next time, spill it on my textbooks, okay? Then I'll finally have an excuse to skip studying." Mia burst into giggles, and Ethan scrunched his nose. "I didn't do it on purpose," he whined. Moments like these left Emma with a bittersweet ache. Should she laugh or cry? She often joked silently to herself, "I'm 18, but my resume already looks like that of a single mom with 2 kids." School life was hardly an escape. One morning in her philosophy class, Emma was so sleep-deprived that she collapsed onto her desk and drifted into deep, heavy sleep. The night before, she had been up until 2 a.m. first calming Ethan's feverish cries, then packing orders for her online shop. "Emma." The professor's voice cracked like thunder. She bolted upright, her hair sticking out in messy tangles. Yes, I'm listening." The class erupted into laughter. The professor crossed his arms, raising a skeptical brow. "Then why don't you explain to the class what Kant says about duty and morality?" Emma's mind went blank. The only duty she could think of was mopping up milk stains at home. She swallowed, then blurted out, "I think Kant meant that we should do the right thing even if we don't want to. Like cleaning spilled milk at midnight, or paying rent instead of buying shoes on sale." The room roared with laughter. Even the professor shook his head, smiling despite himself. Kant never wrote about milk. But fine. A very practical example. Emma sank back into her chair, her face burning red. "Philosophy won't pay my bills," she thought bitterly. "But at least it gives me a chance to vent in front of a crowd." The coffee shop wasn't much kinder. On one of her most exhausted mornings, she accidentally mixed up 2 orders. A grumpy customer waved his cup at her. "Miss, I ordered a cappuccino." "This is a latte." Emma blinked at the drink, struggling to focus. She forced a crooked smile. "I'm so sorry. I was haunted by Kant all night. My brain's still too philosophical to function this morning." Her coworker snickered behind the counter, almost spilling his tray from laughing. And then there were her live stream sales, squeezed into the scraps of her free time. One evening, Emma held up a hoodie in front of the camera, her voice lively even as her eyelids drooped. "This one's basically brand new, oversized, and makes you look instantly cute." Before she could finish, Ethan barreled into the room, snatched the mic, and shouted at full volume, "Emma, I'm hungry." The live chat exploded instantly. "Oh my god, he's adorable. Put him up for sale instead. Buy 1 hoodie, get 1 brother free." Emma wanted the floor to swallow her whole. She grabbed Ethan, laughing awkwardly as she tried to pull him out of frame. "Sorry, everyone. This little guy isn't for sale. He's a defective product, but he's adorable for life." The comments flooded with laughing emojis and heart reactions. Mia nearly rolled off the couch, holding her stomach from laughing so hard. while Ethan grinned proudly, basking in the attention. And Emma, she laughed too. Because what else could she do? Deep down, she loved them fiercely. She never resented Mia's endless chatter, Ethan's messes, or even Karen's request for her to contribute to the household. She understood why Karen had asked. She saw it in the lines on her face, the exhaustion in her eyes. Still, there were nights when Emma stared into the bathroom mirror and wondered, have I already lost 18? Did I skip straight into adulthood without even noticing? Her life was a patchwork quilt of contradictions, laughter and fatigue, warmth and frustration, love and sacrifice. She carried it all with humor, because if she didn't laugh, she feared she would finally collapse under the weight. And so Emma kept moving, half laughing, half crying, stumbling her way through the blurred line between girlhood and adulthood, never sure if she was holding her family together, or if her family was the only thing holding her up. Karen was folding clothes into a suitcase when she turned to Emma. Sweetheart, I'm planning to take Mia and Ben to Grandma's for 2 weeks. Do you want to come with us? Emma hesitated. She did miss her grandmother, but the thought of skipping classes and losing hours at her part-time job made her chest tighten with guilt. She forced a smile and shook her head. You go ahead with the kids, Aunt Karen. I'll be fine here. Karen's brows furrowed with worry. Are you sure? Won't you get lonely? I don't want you wearing yourself out. Emma chuckled and replied in mock seriousness, don't worry. I'll finally get the chance to blast music and dance around the living room. The neighbors will probably bang on the door to kick me out. Karen laughed despite herself. And so, that weekend, she and the children left, the house falling quiet for the first time in years. Asterisk for the first 2 days. The silence felt like freedom. No children thundering through the hallway, no constant demands for help with homework. Emma spread her books across the kitchen table, savoring the rare peace, and managed to catch up on assignments she had been neglecting. But by the 3rd day, her body began to betray her. It started with a dull headache. Then her throat turned raw, every swallow like fire. Soon the fever came, rolling over her in waves until she could barely drag herself out of bed still. She told herself she could manage. Just rest a little. It'll pass. Until one morning, sitting in her lecture hall, the world suddenly went black. Her vision narrowed, her ears rang, and before she could steady herself, she collapsed forward, sending gasps rippling across the room. Asterisk when Emma stirred again. The first thing she felt was motion, her body bouncing gently with each hurried step. She was being carried on someone's back. The scent of fresh wood and laundry soap rose from the jacket brushing against her cheek, a scent she knew all too well. Her heart gave a weak but unmistakable flutter. It was Ethan, her classmate, her quiet crush of many months. Emma, hang on. Don't fall asleep on me, okay? His voice was urgent, threaded with panic, yet warm in a way that made her chest ache. She managed a faint, slurred reply. What is this? Some kind of marathon, with me as the prize? Despite his worry, Ethan huffed out a laugh. Yeah, and if I win, I'll give you the medal. Just promise me you won't faint again. Emma's lips curled into a tired smile before everything blurred once more. Asterisk the next time she opened her eyes, she was staring up at harsh fluorescent lights. The sterile tang of disinfectant filled her lungs. A hospital. Beside her sat Ethan, his face etched with worry deeper than she had ever seen. The moment he noticed her stir, relief washed over his features. Emma, finally. You scared the life out of me. His voice trembled between scolding and trembling with relief. In the corner, Lily clutched her backpack, her eyes red and swollen. The professor called an ambulance, but Ethan carried you all the way to the car. You had a fever over 39°C. The doctor said if it had been any later, it could have been dangerous. Emma gave them a weak, apologetic smile. Sorry, I didn't mean to cause trouble. Ethan's jaw tightened. Stop apologizing. The only thing you need to do is rest. Got it. When Lily gently asked if they should call Aunt Karen, Emma quickly shook her head. Her voice was rough from the fever, but her words were steady. No. She deserves a break. She works herself to the bone every day, taking care of the kids, the house, everything. She finally has time to rest at her mom's. I don't want to take that from her. I'll be fine. Just a few days. Asterisk, but the few days stretched into a full week. Emma tried to hide her exhaustion behind smiles, but every step down the hospital corridor felt like dragging lead weights. Asterisk, and yet she was never alone. Lily and Ethan began showing up every day, as if they had quietly made a pact. One would come in the morning, the other in the evening, ensuring there was always someone by Emma's side. Asterisk, Lily brought home-made meals in mismatched containers. She proudly announced she had cooked porridge from scratch. Though the taste was so salty, Emma had to tease her about needing just a dash more fish sauce to balance it out. Lily's face turned red, but the three of them burst into laughter, loud enough that a passing nurse peeked in, shaking her head as if convinced fever had made Emma delirious. Asterisk, Ethan was the opposite, serious, meticulous. He brought store-bought porridge, medication, fresh water bottles, making sure Emma followed every instruction the doctors had given. But when it came to actually feeding her, his large basketball-calloused hands trembled as he tried to hold the spoon steady. Half the porridge dripped onto his sleeve before it even reached her mouth. Asterisk, Emma giggled uncontrollably, her shoulders shaking. Ethan flushed scarlet and muttered, "If you don't stop laughing, I'll put the spoon down and let you starve." Fine, fine, she teased, still smiling. But you'd make a terrible nurse, you know? Day after day, Emma woke to the sight of them. Lily chattering about school gossip, her words tumbling out in an endless stream. Or Ethan sitting quietly at her bedside, a book in his hands, looking up every few minutes just to make sure she was still breathing evenly. Asterisk, somewhere between fever dreams and reality, Emma began to realize something simple but profound. This was the first time she had felt truly cared for, not out of duty, not because someone had to, but because they wanted to. And for the first time in a very long time, Emma didn't feel quite so alone. Emma spent nearly 2 weeks in the hospital before the doctors finally signed her release papers. The moment she heard the words, "You can go home," a wave of relief washed over her, but it was quickly followed by a sharp sting of anxiety. Her body felt like it had been drained of all strength. Every step was shaky. Her hands trembled even when she tried to button her coat. Yet her mind was consumed by one thought: 2 weeks without working. My savings are gone. I even owe Lily money. If I stay home any longer, how am I supposed to survive? The doctor had warned her kindly, "You're still very weak. You should rest at least another week. No heavy work." Emma forced a smile. "Yes, doctor, I will." But as soon as she stepped out through the hospital doors, the smile disappeared. She clenched her fists and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I have to go back to work." The next day, Emma showed up at the cafe with her apron tied neatly around her waist. Though her body was far from ready, every time she carried a tray of drinks, her hands shook so badly that more than once the glasses nearly toppled. "Emma, you should really take more time off," one coworker whispered, concern in her eyes. "You look so pale." Emma brushed it off with the same faint smile she had given the doctor. "I'm fine. Just didn't get much sleep. That's all." 3 weeks later, Karen came back from her mother's house with Mia and Ethan. The moment she saw Emma, she rushed over and hugged her tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, you've gotten so thin. Are you studying too hard?" Emma laughed softly, hiding the truth. "Maybe. I've just been busy, Aunt Karen." But I'm fine, really. Karen stroked her hair gently. She didn't press further, but the worry in her eyes lingered. For a while, the house came alive again. Ethan chattered excitedly about Grandma's chicken soup. Mia spun around in a new dress she'd been given, and Karen busied herself with unpacking, cleaning, and cooking. Every so often, she would glance at Emma and sigh quietly, as if carrying a weight she couldn't put into words. Emma understood. Karen still cared for her deeply, but love alone couldn't pay the bills. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Karen set her chopsticks down and spoke gently, almost casually. Emma, you haven't given me your part of the rent this month. Did you forget? The air froze for a moment. Emma's hands stiffened, her gaze dropping to her bowl. I haven't gotten paid yet, but I'll give it to you soon. I promise. Karen nodded. Her tone wasn't sharp, just calm. I know. Just try to manage it, okay? Emma nodded quickly, relieved that there was no anger. But 2 days later, when she came home from a long shift, clothes damp with sweat, Karen reminded her again at the doorway. Emma, don't forget about the rent. Emma swallowed hard and forced a smile. Yes, I remember. And then a few days later, it came up once more. Karen's voice was still soft, never accusing. But each reminder felt like a single drop of water falling again and again onto Emma's chest, gentle, but relentless, until the pressure ate deep inside. Emma felt torn into. She knew Karen wasn't heartless. For years, Karen had been the one to raise her, feed her, embrace her like her own child. She remembered the warm meals, the protective hugs, the nights Karen stayed awake rocking Mia so Emma could rest. Emma was grateful for all of it. She loved her Aunt Dot, but now, every time she heard the words rent money, it was as if the love had been thinned out, watered down, half affection, half obligation. That night, Emma sat alone in her dimly lit room. The small desk lamp cast a faint shadow across the walls, while the muffled sound of Karen's voice drifted through the hallway, softly singing Mia to sleep. Emma pulled her knees to her chest and whispered into the silence, "She's still a good person. I know she is. But why do I feel so lost here?" The days that followed blurred together for Emma, each one heavier than the last. On the surface, life seemed to return to its usual rhythm. She woke up, went to work at the cafe, came home to the family's chatter. To anyone watching, it might have looked like she was doing fine. But beneath that thin layer of normalcy, Emma was quietly unraveling. During the day, she kept her smile in place like armor. She laughed when Mia showed her drawings, nodded when Ethan mumbled about a new video game, and responded politely whenever Karen tried to start a casual conversation. To the others, she seemed distracted, maybe a little tired, but nothing more. That was exactly how Emma wanted it. She didn't want anyone worrying about her. She didn't want to be a burden. But when night came, and the house finally grew quiet, the mask slipped. Emma would sit at her desk, the yellow glow of the lamp casting shadows over a notebook filled with numbers. Her hands trembled as she added and subtracted, crossed things out, tried again. Rent, tuition, debts, the list never ended. She stared at the page until the ink blurred into dark smudges, blurred by tears she couldn't hold back anymore. The debt she owed Lily weighed on her like a secret stone she carried alone. Tuition was coming due, threatening to crush her already fragile budget. And rent lingered in every corner of her mind. Karen never raised her voice, never scolded her. But every time, her aunt gently reminded her, "Don't forget the rent." Emma, the words echoed like a drumbeat in her chest. It wasn't anger, but it was constant. Soft, steady, impossible to ignore. Emma tried to tell herself she could handle it. She whispered inside her head, "Just a little longer. Just hold on." But every whisper came with a tightening in her chest. as if invisible hands were pulling a rope around her throat, knotting it tighter each day. There were still moments of tenderness, moments that reminded her she wasn't alone. Sometimes Mia burst into her room without warning, all energy and innocence, wrapping Emma in a sudden hug. "Emma, when are we going to the park again?" the little girl asked, her eyes sparkling. Emma reached down, pinched her sister's cheek, and forced a cheerful grin. "Soon, sweetheart. As soon as I'm not so busy." Mia giggled and skipped away, satisfied. Emma waited until she was gone before her smile collapsed, leaving her eyes burning. Wet at the edges. Ethan, in his quiet way, said nothing. But more than once, Emma found a bag of chips or cookies sitting neatly on her desk, left there as if by accident. He never mentioned it, never asked if she noticed. But she always did. It was his way of telling her he saw her exhaustion, even if he didn't have the words to say so. That silent kindness made her heart ache even more, because it reminded her how much she wanted to stay strong for them. And so she swallowed it all. She swallowed her exhaustion, her tears, and her desire to cry out, "I'm trying. I'm doing my best. Please understand me." She never said those words aloud, not to Karen, not to Lily, not to anyone. Instead, she held them inside, locked tight behind her ribs, where they pressed harder and harder every day. Her thoughts circled endlessly. "I have to be strong. I can't let them down. I can't be a weight dragging everyone else down with me. If I just keep pushing, maybe things will get better. Just a little longer. Just a little longer." But that little longer kept stretching further and further, until it didn't feel like encouragement anymore. It felt like a curse. The rope around her chest pulled tighter, digging in deeper. Emma lived every moment with the sense that something inside her was on the verge of snapping. That afternoon, Emma opened her email and froze. It was a notice from school, a late payment warning for tuition. Her heart pounded against her ribs, and for a moment the screen blurred. The 2 weeks in the hospital had drained her savings, and she had even borrowed money from Lily just to cover medical bills and groceries. Now tuition was overdue. Rent was still hanging over her head, and every responsibility seemed to pile one on top of the other until she could hardly breathe. After class, Emma made a delivery for one of her side jobs. On the way back, she happened to run into Alex, who offered to walk with her and help carry the boxes. They chatted on the way home, Alex laughing easily, his presence briefly lifting the weight from her shoulders. For a moment, Emma almost felt normal. But when they reached the house, Karen was standing at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, her eyes sharp. "Emma," she said, her tone firm, "why are you coming home so late?" "And with that boy?" Emma's breath caught. She stammered, clutching the strap of her bag. "And Karen, I was just delivering an order. That's all." Karen's brow furrowed. Her voice grew sharper. "Delivering an order? Or out running around, wasting money, doing who knows what? This house runs on responsibility, Emma. What are you thinking?" Emma froze, her throat tight. She had no strength left to argue. She wanted to explain, to beg Karen to understand, but the words stuck like stones in her mouth. That night at dinner, the tension hung in the air. The clinking of chopsticks against bowls was the only sound until Karen set hers down. With a deliberate clack, "Emma," she said, her voice calm but edged with frustration, "your rent is almost 2 weeks late. Are you planning to let it slide forever? Or are you blowing money on things you're not telling me about?" Emma kept her head down, staring into her rice bowl. She bit her lip hard, willing herself not to cry, but the weight in her chest grew unbearable. Finally, the dam broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she burst out, her voice trembling but fierce. "I'm not wasting anything. I'm doing everything I can. I'm going to school. working shifts at the cafe, running deliveries, taking care of Mia and Ethan. Do you think I'm just sitting around doing nothing? I'm exhausted. I'm trying. I really am. Karen's eyes narrowed. Then tell me this, Emma. If you're working, if you're so busy, where's the money? Why is the rent still unpaid? Emma's hands shook as she clutched her chopsticks. Her voice cracked. I didn't spend it on myself. I didn't buy anything. Karen leaned forward, her gaze sharp, her tone rising. Don't lie to me. If you're not wasting money, then explain it. Everyone in this house pulls their weight. Why can't you? Something inside Emma snapped. All the nights she'd stayed up studying after work. All the mornings she dragged herself out of bed to care for her siblings. All the hours she'd spent swallowing her pain, it all came crashing out. With a sob, she shouted, because I was in the hospital. I was there for 2 weeks. I used every bit of my savings to pay for it, and I still had to borrow from Lily just to get by. That's why the rent is late. I wasn't out wasting money, I was trying to survive. The room fell silent. Karen blinked, her face paling. Her lips parted, but no words came at first. Finally, her voice broke, trembling as much as Emma's. You were in the hospital for 2 weeks, and you didn't tell me. Emma, sweetheart, why didn't you say anything? Are you okay? Emma bowed her head, tears spilling freely now. Her words came out in ragged gasps. I didn't want you to worry. You already do so much working, taking care of Mia and Ethan. I didn't want to be another burden for you to carry. Karen pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes wet. Her voice shook, half angry, half heartbroken. Emma, do you even know what it does to me, knowing you've been hurting all alone? That you were sick, in pain, and you thought you had to hide it from me? You scared me. You really scared me. Emma broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, and stumbled into her aunt's arms. Karen pulled her close, holding her tightly, her own tears streaming. I'm sorry, Karen whispered, her voice raw. I should have seen how much you were carrying. I never meant to pile more on you. I'm so sorry for pushing so hard, for not asking sooner. Emma clung to her, shoulders shaking, as years of bottled-up fear and exhaustion poured out of her chest. Suddenly, small arms wrapped around her waist. Mia's little voice quivered. Emma, please don't cry anymore. I know you've been working so hard. I know. Ethan reached across the table, his hand slipping into hers. His voice was quiet, but steady. You don't have to carry everything alone. I'm here too. We'll help you, Emma. Always. Karen stroked Emma's hair, rocking her gently like she was a child again. You're not alone, sweetheart. You never were. From now on, we'll face this together. No more secrets. No more suffering in silence. I promise. Emma's sobs softened. Her face was still wet with tears, but her breathing slowed. For the first time in weeks, the crushing pressure in her chest eased. Around the dinner table, the family sat in silence, bound together not by obligation, but by love. The misunderstanding, the weight, the endless pressure, it all finally cracked open, replaced by something softer, something healing. And as Emma leaned into her aunt's embrace, she realized she didn't have to be strong alone anymore. After all the hardships, the sleepless nights, and the silent tears, Emma finally realized one simple truth. She didn't have to carry the weight of the world on her own. Her tuition was still overdue. The rent had yet to be paid. Her body, still recovering from illness, often trembled with weakness. Yet beyond all these struggles, Emma began to notice something that had quietly been there all along: the steadfast love of her family. Karen's constant reminders about the rent once felt like heavy chains around Emma's chest. But now, Emma could see what lay beneath, not criticism, but worry. Worry for her future, for her well-being, for the path she was trying so hard to walk alone. Responsibility and love, Emma realized, were never opposites. They were two sides of the same coin. During her illness, Karen had been the one cooking porridge, measuring medicine, and quietly rearranging schedules so that Emma could rest. Mia, with her innocent questions and bright laughter, reminded Emma that life still held simple joys waiting for her. Ethan, reserved as ever, said little, yet the small snack he would leave on her desk, pretending not to notice, spoke louder than words. All these gestures, stern or gentle, big or small, taught Emma something profound. Love doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it hides inside strict voices. Other times, it whispers through the tiniest acts of care. And Emma learned another lesson. Growing up doesn't mean bearing everything alone. Independence is precious, yes, but so is the courage to ask for help, to admit weakness, and to know when to say no, to lean on others, not as a burden, but as someone who belongs, someone allowed to share both joys and struggles. One evening, as Emma sat by the window, the sunset spilled its warm colors across the house. She felt the quiet peace settle inside her chest. Life ahead was still uncertain. Challenges would not simply vanish. But she knew now that she was not walking into them alone. With family, friends, and the lessons she had fought to learn, she would step forward steadier, braver, and more hopeful that life will never be free of hardships. But love, understanding, and patience, these are the bridges that carry us across every trail. Emma drew a deep breath, smiled softly, and felt a calm strength within her. She was ready to begin the next chapter of her 18-year-old life, not with fear, but with faith in the bonds that had shaped her.